for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Debbie Levitt from Delta CX. Welcome to my universe. It's May 26, 2020, and it is time for Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Please remember that in the future, this will move to half past the hour. So if you've got your calendars marked for Office Hours, as I hope you do every Tuesday, please shift it forward a little bit. We'll be starting 15 minutes later than now in the future. I have no questions ready to go. Nobody sent in any questions this week. So let's get the chat room queued up. And let's take off number 2. There we go. So you can always ask a question anonymously at deltacx.link/AMA. We are also watching, can I point at this? My chat room. This will combine both comments and questions from YouTube and LinkedIn. So wherever you're watching, let's have something. And it's just gone blank. What did I get? I got Andra says hello, Debbie. Sorry, it didn't show up on the screen. I'll have to fine tune that. But good to see Andra's here. I hope I'm pronouncing your name okay. And I am here for Office Hours Ask Me Anything. So everybody, ask me everything. Let's see. I'll type something here to try to make this box shift. So let's see. What are your questions? Steele says hi. Hi, Steele. I don't know you. Hopefully you're part of our world. CX and UX. As usual, I take questions on CX and UX, both on careers, not just both, on careers, techniques, all kinds of things. Someone said this morning I should take questions on UX'er. So I am an UX'er expert. There are certainly people who know more than I do, but I'm one of their recognized trainers. So if you're looking to learn UX'er and you're really stuck, I'll try to help. But in general, I tend to take questions about CX and UX careers, work, office conflicts, projects. What do we tend to get questions about? Techniques, approaches, models, recommendations, everything. So while we're waiting for questions, I'm just going to tell you guys a couple of stories, as I do sometimes fill the time while we're waiting for it. I'll sit back in my chair. One thing that I wanted to tell you guys is congratulations to me. As of today, my trademark on Delta CX in the USA is registered, R in a circle. So it joins other beautiful registered trademarks I have, like the 4 Horsemen of Bad UX and DevOps ICU and P-Type. So there's that. And I also want to remind everybody, please subscribe on, I need like a Pac-Man coming by and eating this. Wow, 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 wow. Please subscribe on YouTube. I've got 400 subscribers and my next goal is 500. I don't have anything exciting to offer you when that happens. I'm just hoping to keep seeing more subscribers. As of when I'm recording this isn't monetized. I just love getting the message out. So won't you please subscribe on YouTube and ring that bell so you know when I'm doing stuff. Steele says, what do you see as the in-demand skills in UX over the next 5 years? Good question. And of course, again, this is an opinion and a guess. Nobody can say for sure what's going to happen. And I think UX is really at a crossroads right now. I think we're at a crossroads where UX is either going to become more valued at companies, in which case certain skills will be in demand, and I'll mention those in a moment, or I think it's going to be less valued, because that's kind of the trend we've been watching for the last 4 or so years, where UX is increasingly misunderstood, it's increasingly devalued, and if you're a graphic designer who put UX on your resume, you can get the job. So, of course, I'm hoping that we're going in the direction of companies valuing UX, valuing product quality and customer value, and solving customers' problems. I'm hoping we're going in that direction. In that case, I believe the number one skill that you will need to have is UX research. However, I believe that in many cases, some companies will want the specialized UX researcher where that's all that you do, and some companies will want an advanced degree in that, and some won't. But I still think companies will tend to combine research with something else. Sometimes it's combined with information architecture and interaction design. Unfortunately, it gets lumped sometimes with visual design, which it shouldn't be. Sometimes it's lumped with front end development, which it shouldn't be. Um, I also believe in the future it may get lumped a little bit with kind of data analysis and data modeling. In my book, I recommend that a specialized UX research partner with a specialized UX data analyst. That to me, these are two separate jobs, but they should be in our department and working together. Because the more our researchers know about customers and their behaviors and their fears and motivations and things like that, and their tasks, the more it'd be great to have in our department data analysts and people who can model data and create algorithms to say, okay, based on what we know about people, how can we have some models surrounding that, or how can we create some proactivity surrounding that, or how can we predict more of what these people might do based on what we know. So I can see somebody trying to combine that, but I kind of hope it will stay separate and that research will stay a specialty. But ultimately, I think research will be important. I think that interaction design is ultimately incredibly important, absolutely important, and it's something I see done so badly so often by so many. It's hard to say what's the in demand thing. We have to do all of these well. There's no possible weak link here where we can say, well, if your research was good but your interaction design was done by somebody not totally qualified, well, it's still okay. Our chain breaks at every single possible point. So I definitely don't have any answer that makes it sound like one thing is or should be valued more than another. But I'm hoping that if we can get UX and CX more understood and respected in the coming years, that we will once again prize and prioritize research, and that we will shift away from the crappy books that have made research sound like it takes too long, it's too expensive, you don't really need it, just go with guesses and assumptions. I hope we'll shift away from that. I hope companies will find that didn't really work for them. Steele, is that's an opinion. Who knows? But thank you for asking. And if you guys have any questions, this is Office Hours Ask Me Anything. And I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Let's see if I can fix this a little bit. Fixing it, not fixing it, making it better, making it worse. Hard to say. Okay. Um, if you guys have any questions at all, I'm happy to take them. You're welcome. But I guess the real question is, Steele, what do you think? What do you think is going to shift in UX over the coming years? That's my best thoughts and guess, but it really depends on what happens in the coming. Insightful. Well, it's insightful if it's true. Again, this is a guess or an estimation. I hope UX and CX will be more supported and understood and prioritized. And I'm going to do everything I can to fight for that in the things that I say and the things that I write and the things that I publish. But it really takes all of us. It takes all of us to get that word out. Further commoditization is my guess. And I think you have to figure out where the commoditization is, because while you have people claiming that AI can do interaction design, or just use this piece of software and something someone sketches is now fully coded front end dev stuff, I think if anything, people will try to commoditize the interaction design aspect. Now, of course, they'll try that and it'll fail, though for starters, they'll find ways to make themselves believe it's not failing, because companies love to lie to themselves and get wiggly with numbers. But I think if anything, that would be an area where I think people would try to see if we can get software to do this or AI to do this. But when it comes to research and testing, I think there's just going to be no substitution for that. And I don't see how that becomes a commodity. But if you see that path, tell me. This is a conversation. And luckily, you're on YouTube, which is only about 20 seconds delay from when I'm speaking. So we can have an almost synchronous conversation compared to LinkedIn, who unfortunately is usually 2 or 3 minutes behind. So people tend to think I'm not answering them when I am. So best to subscribe on YouTube. Let me check to see if there's any comments on LinkedIn that didn't make it to my combined system. Nope. Let's see what you guys think. So there was this. Oh, there's a second story I was going to tell while I waited for more questions. And Steele, you can continue giving me your thoughts on this and where things might go or should go. And that is, very. I'll answer your question in a moment. I wanted to tell this story. So, very often you'll hear people say, especially in the realm of design thinking, that we need to just have empathy, create empathy, have empathy, hold a workshop, create empathy, magically have empathy. And I put out a lot of content that says, psychologically speaking, for the most part, you can't create empathy. Either people are empathetic or they're not, and it's very difficult to create empathy in people. You might be able to drum up some sympathy, but it's not the same thing. And I think one area where we can remind ourselves about a lack of empathy, and I don't mean this in any political way at all, it's accidentally political, but I'm looking at it sheerly from the perspective of empathy. And that is, there's a bit of a debate in America on whether or not people should wear masks, like surgical style masks or protective face coverings out in public. And there are many people who say we should wear them, and there are many regional and local governments who say please wear them. And then there are some people who say I don't want to wear a mask. That's infringing on my freedom or my liberty. Now, I'm not going to debate that point. If that's how they feel, they can feel that way, even if I wouldn't agree. But the interesting thing about a mask is that it does not protect you from anything, but it's supposed to protect others from you. So if you have a cold, if you have a flu, if you have something worse, the idea is that if you wear the mask, then when you're breathing or sneezing or coughing or spitting or whatever it might be, then your stuff isn't floating out into the world, and you're less likely to give someone any sickness, whether it's cold or flu or something else. And that, of course, takes empathy. It takes empathy, true empathy, to say, oh, you know what? This may or may not be something I want to do. It may or may not be something I really need for myself. But you know what? I want to help the next person. I want to make sure I don't, if I've got something, I want to make sure I don't accidentally infect anybody else. So I'm going to wear this mask for others. And I think this is an example of where it's we realize you can't create empathy. You just can't create empathy. You would like to, and you can't. So heads up, all you people claiming let's just have empathy, let's put sticky notes on a wall and show empathy. At best you're showing sympathy. It's not empathy. Let's see what Steele's been saying. Steele says, I find companies still don't understand UX or digital products in general. They pay lip service to the latest agile buzzwords and doing research, but ultimately, when it comes to the crunch, they want to build without research or validation. Then they wonder why their initiative is a failure. Steele, I don't know you. You're new to me, but you're absolutely right. I highly agree with you. And I'm pushing out a lot of information aimed at pushing against that. I've got a podcast on UX and Agile and what's going wrong and right there. I'm working behind the scenes on fresh content and more information that I can put out there to try to fix this problem. It's really a multi-pronged problem, and I'm trying to get at the core of it, so I'm being a little secretive about it. But I'm hoping in the next months I'll have something that I can show everybody, maybe by the end of the summer, that will hopefully make some real changes in our industry and maybe in digital products in general. That's my hope. It won't make me any money necessarily, necessarily, but it'll hopefully change the world. Steele says, or worse, they bury their heads in the sand and not face up to the problems until it's too late. You're totally right. I just bought a stock photo of heads in sand for a slide I was making for the exact same type of thing. So it's like you're over my shoulder, stalking me and seeing what I'm writing. And then you had another question, which was, what advice or alternate career path would you recommend for UX professionals who feel disillusioned with the current state of UX? I've got to copy and paste that one because I keep a list of all the questions that we answered. And I do get this question from time to time. I do have some friends who feel very disillusioned with UX, and they're trying to figure out, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. I don't want to keep going into companies that don't understand what I do and be an order taker. And how do UX people keep doing it when it can be so thankless? And I say, I know it's pretty thankless for me too. I just had this conversation this morning with a friend who often feels pretty fed up and might actually shift back more to visual design. And I support him in that, if that'll make him feel better and lower his stress for a short time or for the rest of his career. And I said, for me, it's a calling. I can't not do this. It is just what's in my blood and what I believe I'm meant to do, and I can't not do this. And so I'm not shifting out of it. But I was saying to him, I said, geez, the last project I think I really felt very proud of that wasn't from my own agency, that came from some other job, was probably like 2015. It's so rare that I get to do something really rewarding. So, what alternative career path do I recommend for UX peeps who are looking to shift out of UX temporarily or permanently? I think it really depends, maybe what level of education you have. If you have a master's degree or higher, you should qualify to teach at the college or university level. And while you may be disillusioned, if you are disillusioned, that probably means you're a UX purist. And that probably means you want to see the right things done for the right reasons. And I would like you teaching at colleges so that the next people are learning from better people than they sometimes are now. Not all professors are bad, not all schools are bad, but gosh, there are some bad things out there. And I would love to see you, if you have the master's or higher, teaching at the university level. If you have lower than that, maybe teach at a boot camp, because these boot camps are freaking disasters. And perhaps you can get involved in fixing the curriculum and teaching that. What else could a UX professional do if they are going to get out of UX? Hard to say, because everybody's got different talents and skills and strengths, and my goal is always to play to people's strengths. So I would try to figure out what each person is good at and what comes from their hearts, and try to figure out what would be a good match to them. If I couldn't work in UX anymore, I would probably want to be an operatic European metal singer. But that's probably a little hard to break into, and not necessarily a guaranteed career path for anyone. So I don't think I have general advice that says, if you're feeling a little fed up with UX, here's what you should do. But I would think if you're feeling fed up with UX, you're someone who should be teaching it, because you probably want to do the right things the right ways, and that's what the next generation should be learning. Okay, we got some messages from Steele. Steele, you're on fire. Do I know you? Who are you? Someone, add me on LinkedIn. Who are you? And where's all our LinkedIn peeps? And you're the only one on YouTube. And where's everybody else? LinkedIn says 2 people watching. Hi, LinkedIn. So Steele is saying, um, where were you? Okay, I find there's a lot of burnout working in cross-functional Scrum teams. Steele, can you tell me why? Do you know why people burn out working in cross-functional Scrum teams? I'd like to hear a little bit more if you know or hypothesize why. Because of all the politics and disorganization and corner cutting and arbitrary deadlines. Okay, so you kind of answered that. You can add more color to that if you'd like, because that could help my secret project. You're on LinkedIn. You're following me. Okay, maybe add me. I will look for you. Oh, but hold on. I have to copy and paste your question, because that's what I do here. Where's your question? Is service design a better route for those for passion with strategy? Okay, here we go. Let's write that. Service design can be great if that's something you find you've been good at, or kind of an area of UX where you feel you excel. You certainly can go into it, but I have to say, I feel like I see so few service design jobs. Just like, yeah, I don't see a lot of research and development jobs anymore. Remember when R&D was everything? Sorry, I've got a bug flying around me, and I'm worried it could be a mosquito, so I might be swatting at things you guys can't see. Um, I love service design. If you can find a service design job, go for it. But I feel like they are hard to find and rare because people don't fully understand them. Like, even when a company knows it needs service design, who do they hire? What do they put into that? I think they don't even know, just like UX, sometimes they don't even know that there are specialists who do this thing. So to me, it sounds like service design could be out of the frying pan into the fire, as we say, where you thought you've left one terrible thing to go into something great, but then it's also wacky and misunderstood. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. I have spring allergies. See, that's why you wear a mask. Um, Yikes. Um, so I think if you have a passion for strategy, I wonder if the right path for you, again, depending upon how many years you've been doing this. Sorry, how many years you've been doing this. um, might be to move more into leadership and managerial stuff, which again would be my dream for someone like that, because you want to see UX done the right way. You might be more of a purist in on the human-centered design and Don Norman side versus the boot camp and design thinking and just do a design sprint side. And I would want to see you be a manager. I would want to see you be a leader at a company. And typically a managerial or leadership job is going to be more strategic and operational than the individual contributor jobs, which are going to be your, especially your principal, lead, senior, and below, where you're going to be expected to be the worker bee. So I think if someone has a passion for strategy, see what you can do to maybe shift your angle on that a little bit, and maybe try going for some manager jobs, or try to get promoted where you are, something like that. Excuse me. I'm just having a freak sniffly allergy moment. But this is office hours. Ask me anything. I know we don't have too many people joining us live today, but I do this every Tuesday, and I am happy to take any questions that people might have. And I'm just poking around LinkedIn. Yeah, Steele, if I can call you that, you'll have to send me a message, because I'm not able to find you on LinkedIn, so I assume this is more of an avatar name or a pseudonym than your actual name. Bless you. Thank you. Did you ever see where bless you came from? It's like the plague, where they thought, like, when you sneeze, your soul leaves you, or God hates you, or something like that. Whew. I find most UX managerial jobs ask for UI design skills. I have not been seeing that. I would say a lot of the UX managerial jobs that I've seen have not asked for UI design skills. Now, they might want to see if you've done UI work in the past. I tried to show them some of the art direction I've done, because I'm not an artist, so I do not have a visual design portfolio, but I have art directed artists, so I could speak to that. Can you guys see this thing? And I reorganized my desk the other day, and I evidently reorganized my fly swatter to away from my where my headset can reach. Hold on, I'll be right back. Hello. Hey, Scott R., good to see you. Almost missed this post-day off blues. It's more like, what day is it? But that's been kind of, maybe... Okay, I got my fly swatter now, guys. If you see me swatting, I promise it's at something real. Phew. Steele, if I can call you that. says, "Hey, I've already been working as a lead and manager. Good. Please, would you please save the world then? Please, please help us out." Asking for pixel perfect designs. I know, look, all we can only just keep trying, and we can just keep standing up and saying something. Stand up and say something when Jared Spool says everybody's a designer. Stand up and say something when someone says, "Let's do what the Lean UX book says and get rid of research and specialists." Stand up and say something. That's all I can ask people to do. Think critically and speak up. It can't only be me. Scott R. Scott R., how was your day off? Um, Perhaps in my area, most still want to give you a design test as a UX leader where the focus is on UI. Yeah, considering you spelled something with a Queen's S, you're not in America, and that's okay. I'll just be less familiar with what's going on where you are, which would be something of the Queen's countries and colonies. Excuse me. I also have my propolis. Hands up, who's into propolis? Ugh. I recently got into it. I think it's helping, but it's a little yucky. Asia. Okay, hello. Because you've got the Queen's spelling, the correct spelling, not like what Americans do. Um, so I have seen. I interviewed some months ago for a UX leader role, and they didn't want me to do a design test, but they wanted me to like sample facilitate a group brainstorming session. I thought that was a great way to try to check my abilities as a potential UX leader or something like that. Is how do I bring people together and get something great out of them, and how do I work with other people, and can I give other people credit when they have good ideas, or do I look like a narcissist? See yesterday's podcast. So, um, I think that if it's a UX manager and they can't tell from your resume and portfolio that you've done a lot of UX work and have manager capabilities, and they want to test your visual design, I don't want to work there. I don't want to work at a place that doesn't understand UX. They're going to have to keep failing and hopefully at some point figure out how much they failed. Um, Hot, sweaty, and gross. We skipped spring. Scott, remind me where you are. I don't remember right now. I wanted to say Atlanta, but I've got 7,000 followers and 3,000 connections, and I don't remember where everybody is. And Steele's in Singapore, probably also a bit toasty. Serby over in LinkedIn, didn't forget you. Thanks for waiting. Says, what's an ideal way to research? Now, that's a great question, but it's one that is a big it depends. It really depends on what your project is. I can't say that there's just one way to do research. Scott's in Chicago. Thank you. Serby, I can't say there's one right way to do research, but the main way to do research, of course, would be qualitative in our CX and UX world. That means we care less about surveys and focus groups and some of these things. We can always collect some information that way. We can check customer support tickets. We can look at app reviews, but the best way to go is to go directly to the customer with observational research, which is a little hard in the pandemic, but some people are inventing some ways to do this more remotely, and certainly interviews to learn more directly about people. So I would say the most ideal way to research is probably observational. I'll tell you a quick story why. As usual, True Lemon, not sponsored, just love them. Tornadoes and floods in Chicago. Well, that's a mess. That's a mess. Please stay safe, Scott R. Here's a little research story. I was on LinkedIn one day, and a woman was an intern for an airline, and she was sending out a survey asking about what some bad experiences you had checking in to get on a flight, checking in with the agent, and how could that have been better? And I said, this is not the kind of thing that deserves a survey, because this is the kind of surveys are flawed to begin with in many cases, but this is where we really need to watch people in action and then speak with them right after their experiences, which of course would be observational research and contextual inquiry. So I was checking in for a flight once, and I saw a woman who, and they were making her gate check. Well, this is at the gate, so this wasn't checking in. They were making a woman gate check her bag. If you don't know what that means you're getting ready to board the plane, but they've run out of room and they want to take people's carry-on bags to check them, but you'll get them in the jetway, so you don't have to go to the belt. You'll get them when you land in the jetway. Um, I guess this woman had never done that before because they took her bag and they gave her a tag, but no, they didn't take her bag. They gave her a tag. She's supposed to put the tag on her bag, tear it in half and keep half of it and let the other go. She didn't know to do that. She put the tag on her tote bag, she put nothing on her bag, and then she left the bag. Well, as you can imagine, the plane lands and they're bringing out the bags. She left. She went right to the carousel, thinking that's where her bag would be. So again, she got everything wrong here. And I don't know if that's her fault. I don't know if it wasn't explained well to her. I don't know if there was a language barrier. You never know. I wasn't listening in. I saw this from afar, but she was at the carousel waiting for this bag. It's up in the jet bridge, and she's not there. Can you imagine if you sent her a survey about her experience with the airline and with her bag? She's going to say, this airline sucks. You guys are jerks. You took my bag. You didn't give it back. I had to go through all this extra time and hassle to find my own bag because she got the process wrong, but she didn't know that. But I knew that from kind of watching this unfold. And so this is where there's a huge difference between how people self-report or tell a story through a survey or through something else and actually watching them do things. And so I think that if I had to pick the most ideal way to do things, it would be some sort of observational research, whether that's going to be in person or whether we're going to shift a little bit more virtual on that in the new world. But I always think that's the best way to go. This is Office Hours Ask Me Anything, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. And also, won't you please subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell so that you can know when I am live or have uploaded a video. Today, I uploaded a little UX'er tutorial that Stephanie in Luxembourg had not totally requested, but it would help her. So please do subscribe on the YouTube. And of course, you can also ask questions anonymously at deltacx.link, which is my URL shortener, /AMA. And that's a one-question survey that collects no information about you, but will show up in my email. And my email app is now updating. So if you're sending it, maybe it'll show up on my phone. But if you have questions, send them on in. And nope, not getting any questions. So let's see. What else? Scott R. Steele, good to see everybody. And let's see, is anybody in LinkedIn today? It's a bit of a quiet day, maybe because everybody had yesterday off. This says nobody's watching in LinkedIn, but sometimes it blips in and out a little bit funny. Hopefully Serby hung around for the answer. If not, remember, if you guys can't hang around for the answers or the questions, these are always archived in the YouTube channel. Just go over to the YouTube channel, which is deltacx. You can get there deltacx.tv if you want, way over here. This is all green screen. I don't know how to point at anything I've got here. Anyone help me? Anyway, deltacx.tv will redirect you to the YouTube channel. And I've got, questions coming in. And I've got playlists. So you can find a playlist of all the podcasts, which sometimes I do alone and sometimes with a guest. And then also a playlist for all of the office hours. Let's see, a question coming in. Whoa, it's a long one. Okay, good. So let's copy and paste it into what's going to end up being the YouTube description. And let's answer it. Let's read it out loud and answer it. Okay. I'm employed as a UI UX designer, my first job with UX in the title, and I was so excited. But I've realized it's plagued with a lot of the things you've warned about. very heavy on the UI, lots of testing and validating. Sometimes I'm not even doing layout. Someone else sends me a PowerPoint mockup, yes, PowerPoint, and tells me to pretty it up. User research? When we get around to it or if we have time. Yes, I come from a visual background, and the position was sold to me as heavy on that, but growing into the UX. But I'm definitely not growing as a UXer as they keep falling back on their habits of agile and lean. We do initial stakeholder interviews and then talk to just a few users to validate what we already talked about. Then I mock stuff up, and workshops more like Worstshops. I actually haven't heard that yet. That's pretty good. I hope we're connected on LinkedIn, mystery person. Anyways, are there ways to leverage my current role towards UCD more? I know I should be happy to have a job right now, but sometimes I'm little more than an order taker, and I'm trying to use what little influence I have to get that UX experience. Hey, anonymous person, you are singing everybody's song and telling a story we have all heard before. So I'm so sorry to hear that that is happening to you. That is pretty common. So Steele, I saw you've asked a question, but this one's going to be a long one. I promise to get to you after. And Steele, do you mean for your portfolio or for something else? So anonymous question person, the fate and the outcome and the direction of your job is probably going to depend a lot on your manager. I don't know if your current manager is the person who interviewed you, who said this was growing into UX. If so, I'd probably be checking back with that person. And I would be saying, hey, you know, when you interviewed me, I was so excited because yes, this was going to play to my strengths with a background of visual design, but it was going to allow me to do more UX work and grow more into user-centered design, but I haven't really been seeing those opportunities yet. Can you help work with me on here's some of these projects? Thanks, Serbi. I'm glad you stuck around. Can you help me with identifying where in some of my projects I can shift more into user-centered design? And if you'd like some examples, I can give you some. And then I would just wait for the answer. Now, if you don't trust your manager, if you don't like your manager, if your manager is never going to go for this, if you've already been told, forget it, this is what we're doing and we don't want anything different, then you are in the bucket of lucky to have a job right now, but I would probably tell you to give up your dreams of being a change agent. There's only so much you can do when all of the gears and the wheels and the mechanisms and the processes are not supporting you. I can always give you some tips on some things you can try, but ultimately you might have a company like we talked about earlier with head in sand who just does not want to hear that there could be another way to do something. And for somebody, because again, you have to remember, and I'm not saying this is good, but you have to remember how much UX shakes up a company, because that person who made those PowerPoint mock-ups has to stop doing it. The engineers who are asking customers, what do you want? And then just building it has to stop happening. All these things people were doing have to stop. So I would want to know a little bit more about what type of business you're at and if you feel like your manager will support you, because that would change my answer. But if you really don't have managerial support and if they're really just going to keep pushing against you, then this might just be a job where you're stuck doing what you're doing and trying to squeak in a little bit of better UX practice where you can. Another thing you can do is I don't know if you saw my podcast on the Lean UX book is neither lean nor UX, but I remind people that one thing you can do is look up the original definition of lean. People think that a lot of people got their definition from the Lean Startup book, but it's a flawed definition of lean. If you look at what lean originally was, it was systems and methodologies and approaches to identify and cut waste so that things could be more efficient. But there's nothing in lean that says cut important parts of a process in order to save time. There's nothing in lean that says go as fast as you can just to get to the next thing. There's nothing in lean that says skimp. In fact, one of the biggest sins in lean is defects. So if your company is putting out products that don't really match what customers need, then that's defects. And so sometimes you can try to circle around it with some information on, you know what, we thought this was lean, but it turns out this is not lean. This is just skimping. This is just cutting things off. And isn't it interesting that we claim that we want to be lean and we claim that we want to cut things down and skimp on everything, but we only do that to UX. We don't skimp on product management. We don't skimp on engineering. We don't cut QA out and refuse to test our code because, hey, that would save us time and we can just get this thing out. So it's amazing how when people start yapping about lean and agile, magically UX somehow is having different rules than everybody else. So I would suggest go into the live podcasts playlist on the YouTube channel, watch the Lean UX is neither lean nor UX, and also watch the one about agile. And feel free to show these to your coworkers, your managers, your leaders, and say, hey, there's somebody out there who is able to show and prove where all of these problems and disconnections are and how much they're going to be working against our company. I think I have some slides in maybe the agile one where I talk about how so often companies don't even look at the real cost of putting a crappy product out to their customers. They just imagine we'll put something out. If people don't like it, we'll fix it. But very often it doesn't get fixed fast and it doesn't get fixed correctly. And what was the cost to your company to put out something crappy in the first place? So I've got a way that I show people on how to calculate that. And then I actually found out after I came up with that Lean Six Sigma has their own version of that, and it's called cost of poor quality. So if anybody at your company thinks they're into lean, and if anybody thinks they're into Six Sigma, go look up cost of poor quality Six Sigma, and you'll learn that this is a thing. And that you need to be calculating, estimating, or predicting this so that you can reduce fixes, reduce redos, get it right the first time. Pretty much everything in real Lean Six Sigma, not fake lean, is about delivering the right product to customers, measuring the quality of your product by how much it matched what customers needed. And that, of course, shines a light on UX research because without knowing what customers need, you can't possibly build the right thing. So I'm going to be working more in the future on on seeing where things like Lean Six Sigma play into some of the things that I've been saying and I've been writing about. Because I think if I can tie some things, even slightly, to some of these other approaches, it just helps everybody. Because people will say, "Oh, Six Sigma, yeah, that seemed like it was about manufacturing and not about digital." And I'll say, "Well, no, here's." Cost of poor quality is still cost of poor quality, whether you made this fly swatter or you made an app. So person there, I would say maybe contact me privately. Maybe I can help a little bit more privately, but those would be some of my kind of follow-up questions there. So let's copy and paste Scott's question. And Scott, I'll answer your question after I answer Steele's question. So Steele said, what's your view on best practices for UX case studies with respect to putting them in your portfolio? Steele, that is best answered by episode 18 of my podcast, which is the best UX portfolio I've seen so far. I think ultimately our case studies and portfolio projects have to show a little bit more detail than we think they need to show, but at the same time, there are sometimes recruiters or HR or middle people who don't care for all of that detail. So we have to find a way both to show kind of that shorter version and the more detailed version. And that's why I liked this guy's portfolio the most, and he gave me permission to go through it in a live podcast. So please check episode 18. And we've got more questions, though Scott has a great question that I'm excited to answer because I actually have a huge amount of content on the answer. Episode 18. Okay, let's write down Steele's next question. So let's talk about Scott's question. I know you're a huge Jared Spool fan, tongue out face, but one of the things he talks about, I actually agree on, is NPS, Net Promoter Score, for those unfamiliar. What's your take on using NPS as a CX measure? NPS is fairly deceptive. Let's open up my marketing slides for the keynote I just did to a marketing conference, and let's talk about NPS. How about that? NPS. Okay. So let's see. Here's my marketing slides. Give me a moment to find them. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen, which is going to kill a lot of what you're seeing right now, but let's do it. And, oh, hold on. My screen is not ready for the sharing. Give me a second. Okay, there we go. Boop, 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 and slide me into the corner. Hello. Oh, I got to fix the top bit. So here's some of my slides that I do for marketing. And I talk about how when CX and marketing can create a closer relationship, there's a number of marketing metrics that we can actually support and augment through our efforts as well. So, of course, marketing cares about things like cost per acquisition. We could be improving that cost per conversion, bounce rate, time on site, which, of course, remember, you don't always want people hanging around on the site. Sometimes it's better to show that they are efficiently getting things done and leaving. P1M1 retention, which is people converting from a free or trial version to being a paid customer. There's lots that CX and UX can be doing to help that. And again, these are all measurable metrics. And then, of course, value of a customer. So again, think about the things that you could be doing to the product, to the public website, to an internal portal that would help marketing achieve and improve these goals, which means NPS is not really the only goal or thing we could look at. And NPS is actually highly flawed. Let me get to that slide. And then, of course, e-commerce measurements like average order value and the number and frequency of repeat purchases. These are things that UX and CX can absolutely improve at any company that would give us the chance to do it rather than just giving it to the marketing department. Let's move past. So this is my NPS slide, and then I'm going to shift past it as well. So in the NPS world, you usually see something like this, that if people give you a 0 through 6, they're a detractor. Your passives are a 7 and 8, and they often say like, well, your passives are probably happy with you but might not tell a friend, and your promoters are happy and loyal. But I find that in general that is a bit of a pipe dream. Even at 9 or 10, you've got room for improvement. 4 to 8, they probably think you suck, and it might be too late to save them. And I usually tell a story at this point in this slide where I talk about how I had a hosting company where my websites were hosted, and I had some bad dealings with customer support. They couldn't solve my problem. I told them if they can't solve my problem, I'll have to cancel. And then they basically let me walk away. And then I started moving sites off of their hosting. And then I get an NPS email, rate us. And I gave them the lowest rating possible and said, you blew it. You blew it. You couldn't solve my problem, so I had to leave. And of course, the next day I get an email from a sales guy who's like, oh, hey, how do you use our service? What's going wrong for you? Too late and too lazy. Too freaking lazy. Read my support tickets and know what's wrong. But if you are not checking in with customers until you send out an NPS survey, then you are not being as proactive as you think. We must be more proactive, especially with qualitative research, and not just use this like this. NPS tells you this, but if you don't use NPS to then spin up qualitative research, because why did everyone give you a 7.6? What could be improved? We can read the text boxes, but we can't just leave it at that. We have to go beyond that. So NPS is a fairly flawed metric that is highly controversial even in the marketing world, and is considered a little bit of a vanity metric unless you act on what you see. And then, of course, 0 to 3s kind of hate you. And in reality, everyone is susceptible to competitive offerings. They say the passives are susceptible and the promoters are loyal. But let's face it, even when you're happy with a company and you give them 9 or 10, you might still leave. You might find that better price. You might find new features. You might find someone innovated. You're only loyal until you're not. So this is a bit of a false thing. And then I think, where's my other slides? Beware of vanity metrics, gather feedback. Okay, I need to go backwards. Hold on. Here we go, behavior triggers. That's what I want to talk about. So I've got a whole podcast on behavior triggers. So if you look back in my podcasts, it says 2 new Delta CX models: empathy, knowledge, action, and behavior triggers. So let me talk more. Well, behavior triggers really aren't a CX metric. So let me break out of this for a moment. And let's go back to the magical world of me. Hello. So, is NPS a CX measure? Yeah, did he have 3,000 words for one case study? He did write a lot, but you'll see a lot of it is in accordions. And that means people who want to see smaller amounts of information see smaller amounts, and people who want to see more see more. He had accordions and he had light boxes. So, Scott, I think the problem is that NPS could be considered a CX measure. It could be, but it's usually reactive, it's lazy, it's quantitative, so it's incomplete. We know a what, we know a how many, but we don't know why. It's like saying, well, everybody who went through airport security hit sad face, so we've got sad faces. Okay, I guess we're doing it wrong. But we don't know anything about, that's my case study. What? You're Avi? Avi, is that you? Avi, are you Steele? What? All right, hold on. Somebody tell me what's going on here. Back to Scott, who is definitely Scott. So Scott, I think there are a lot of good measurements and metrics that CX can use, and they're all going to be around customer satisfaction, and some of them will be quantitative and some of them will be qualitative. But ultimately, I think the best use of something that is quantitative, like NPS or a survey, we can't just say NPS. It's the new CX Holy Grail or UX Holy Grail. I also noticed Spool is now saying CX because I am. We can't just say NPS is now the new UX Holy Grail, especially while marketing is going, ooh, this is kind of controversial. Is it good or bad? Even marketing can't decide, and it's kind of their metric. You're not, Avi. Okay, just checking. Oh, your case study is 3,000 words. That's probably too much. But see where you can use accordions or light boxes like Avi does in episode 18. Scott, we have to figure out what are we measuring and why. And I don't know if Spool talks about that because I avoid him as much as possible for my own sanity. But we have to start every project with what are we measuring and why? And how does this tie back into company and project goals and strategies and initiatives? So if measuring NPS means something, that's great. If getting a bunch of 9s is meaningful, if getting a bunch of 6s is meaningful, that's great. But even if I got a bunch of 9s, and I say this to the marketing audience, I would still be spinning up qualitative research to still learn what we can do better. And in fact, I've started studying Lean Six Sigma, which I mentioned earlier in this podcast. I've started studying Lean Six Sigma to pursue their first certification in it. And I am just amazed at how much they say that every project that you do, if you want to be Six Sigma, has to have the voice of the customer. And that the voice of the customer must be measured reactively through a lot of these quantitative measurements and also proactively through things like interviews. And so when I think about CX metrics, I think there's so many interesting things that we can measure. When I do my talk for developers and engineering, so that was my talk for marketers. When I do my talk for developers and engineering, I say, what if after working from UX, you were actually able to measure that the engineers or the agile teams were more efficient because they were guessing less at what we're building? They were rebuilding less. They were retesting less. They were recycling over things less. They were estimating their time better, because it's probably easier to estimate your time from Debbie's actual prototype than it is to have a product owner say, here's what we're going to be building, and it has this thing here and this thing here. Here's my PowerPoint. What if people started estimating their time better? Now, you could measure that. These are all measurable, and I believe they can all be used to tie back to us. So to me, NPS is lazy, and NPS is Spool just trying to ride on some of the coattails of marketing stuff, because that's what I've been saying since he heard me speaking in September, and he knows I talk about how we should become better friends with marketing and more aligned with their metrics, and then magically that's his new talk. So I think that NPS is a quantitative starting point, as any survey would be. But if we really want to be wearing our CX and UX hats, we need to know more. And ultimately, it's not a measure of us. It's a measure of the project. So are you really trying to measure the CX team, the CX efforts, or customer satisfaction? And if you are trying to measure customer satisfaction, there's a huge amount of data that you should be collating and comparing. What do your app ratings say? What do your app reviews say? What do your reviews maybe on other websites say? There's really an endless amount of stuff that someone could collect that relate to customer service metrics. So I would say NPS is just one trick in the bag, but you can't look at it alone, and you can't rest on a high score, because ultimately NPS ends up a vanity metric. Hey, everybody, we got an 8.4 this quarter. Woo! Okay, next thing. Whoa, hold on. 8.4? What could we do better? So, Scott, what do you think of that? What's your thoughts on what I just said? I know that was a bit of the long version, but I want to know what you think of that as I undo my PowerPoint. Eggplant? Sorry, I've got weird stuff popping into my box, but none of you are asking questions. So there's that. So, hello, this is Office Hours. Ask me anything. We've got a few more minutes, and I'm waiting to hear what Scott thinks about what I've said and what Scott thinks about NPS. So NPS is a CX measure. It just is. Scott says that makes sense in my opinion. I've read a few places resting on that metric as kind of the end all be all. Yeah, that's what ends up happening. That I saw that sometimes at Macy's when I was working there. It was like, hey, and our NPS this quarter for our app or for our whatever was this. Yay! And I'd be like, hold on, so what? And I think it's because, remember, that in the NPS universe, 7 and 8 are passives, meaning they're kind of loyal. They may not proactively recommend you, and you may need to pull them in a little bit. And 9 and 10 are happy and loyal. And that just to me sounds like BlackBerry complacency. Well, people love the BlackBerry. Cool. We got 9 and 10. I asked another question above. Okay, hold on. Oh yes, hold on. I put it in my document. Steele says, I'm finding there's a trend toward product designers over UX. How does a designer realistically keep their skills up in all areas to remain competitive in order to remain relevant? Steele, I would say that's up to you. I am not an artist no matter how you slice me. So I've chosen to keep up my skills in other ways, but none of them are art. I stay on top of art with respect to visual design trends. We recently did a podcast on why new morphism is bad. But I am never going to be a product designer because the current definition of product designer is usually a visual designer who makes some wireframes. It is very rarely someone who's doing in depth customer research and extensive testing. So, again, he says, but many value visual over other skills. Yeah, any job that values visual or UI skills over other things is certainly not for me and is not going to be for a lot of UX specialists, and that's okay. There's always going to be jobs for everybody. There's always going to be jobs for the specialized plumber who only does plumbing, and there's going to be jobs for the handyman or handy woman or handy other who does plumbing and electric and a couple of other things. There's always going to be jobs for everybody, and I don't want anybody to think that if they can't be the unicorn, that they're just going to become irrelevant. There are some people who are screaming, screaming, screaming for more jacks of all trades and unicorns, and there are many people who are screaming against that. So I would say if you want to learn more skills and do more things, I'm not going to stop you. But I would only learn to do the things that you like to do. If you don't like to do front end development, why learn it? Because then you might have to do it day after day at your job and end up with a job you don't like. If you don't enjoy doing visual design or you feel you're just not good at it and you're not getting better, you can try to learn more, but then you're going to get a job where you're going to have to do it all the time. So, that being said, that's, I'm always hoping that we're going to keep finding places for specialists and for T-shaped people. I think of myself as T-shaped. I'm not a unicorn or generalist in that I'm kind of mediocre at everything, as I saw someone write on LinkedIn today. I am not the jack of all trades, but I see myself as T-shaped in that I have some core specialties, which we think of as the long bar of the letter T, and then I have some subspecialties, which are the short bar of the letter T. Though it doesn't work, my hands are the same size, but you know what I mean. So for me, the long bar of the T is information architecture and interaction design and Axure prototyping. Those are probably my core strengths. I love to find those problems and solve those problems and do it through information architecture and interaction design. The short bar of my T would be the research and testing aspects. I love doing a bunch of different types of UX and CX research. I love doing testing. I feel I'm very good at these things, but I don't pretend to be as good as someone who has a master's degree in UX research or the like. So that's why I think of it as my subspecialty rather than my core specialty, even though at many jobs I'm often allowed to do both, especially if it's at an agency or freelancing where they're looking for one person who can do most of the UX arc. But when I show up at those jobs or I apply, I say, look, I'm a so-so writer. You guys read what I write. I think I'm okay. I can write, but I'm not, I don't hugely love content strategy. I can art direct, but I don't want to do visual design. So don't make me do the design system, but I'm happy to oversee the design system. And that's my boundaries. Better to hire a professional writer, better to hire a professional visual designer, and we can always bring in an expert UX researcher if we want or need to, but here's the block of things that I should be able to cover given the scope of your project. And I hope there will always be a place for me and people like me, and for people who do more than I can, and for people who do less than I can. So it's not a matter of more or less, because people who do fewer things than I do are going to do them better than I do it. So it's all a balance. I would say don't drive yourself crazy to try to be relevant. Be the best you can be, whatever that is, and that might change in each moment. And as for me, I'm trying to learn more right now about Lean Six Sigma. It will probably never get me a job. It might be something nobody cares about, but the more I learn about it, the more I think we should be caring about it. So I am working on a certification in that. I am not working on becoming a better front-end developer. I'm not working on becoming a better artist. That's what I'm working on right now, plus all of my writing. I'm writing a lot of stuff right now, and I'm also working on Secret Project to try to fix some of the core of what's broken for us at our jobs. This is normally when we wind down office hours Ask Me Anything, but I'll give a couple of minutes to see if anybody has a last question. Otherwise, please remember that let's see. Please remember that I'm here every Tuesday, though starting next week it will be on the half hour and not on the 15 minutes. So please join. It is 6:30 p.m. for me on Italy time. Please adjust for you. I do not know Singapore time off the top of my head. And Scott in Chicago. I always forget Chicago is Central time, so I think you're -7 to me. So that would be 11:30 in the morning Scott time. Let's see, 6:30 p.m. I think is this time of year. Is India 3.5 ahead of me or 4.5? I think 3.5, so maybe 10 p.m. for people in India. Um, and 9:30 a.m. for people on the west coast of North America. So all the June stuff will be at half past, including the podcasts. So adjust that. Ooh, 1:18 in the morning in Singapore. Still go to sleep. Go to sleep after we're done. Go to sleep. Get some sleep, people. Stop drinking late night coffee. Um, but that's it. So if there's any other questions, let me know. The link here, the office hours Ask Me Anything link, works 24 hours a day. So when some people throw questions at me during the week, knowing that I'll answer them on the next Tuesday, you are always welcome to send in your questions if you happen to think of something. And hopefully that person who asked that great long question earlier will contact me on LinkedIn and we can talk more about your particular predicament. Guys, join in tomorrow when we'll be doing a podcast, 6 p.m. Italy time, not yet on the new times. About the 10 traits every UX practitioner should have. And then I've been planning a mountain of podcasts for June. So stick around for June. I've got lots of cool stuff planned. And Steele says, it'll be our last question. What do you think is a good approach to continuous learning as a UX professional? I think it really depends on what you're looking to learn. You know, for me, I decided I wanted to learn Lean Six Sigma. So I shopped around different courses and picked one and bought it. I did not shop on Udemy. I bought from other companies. It really depends. UX education right now is pretty crappy, so I'm trying to recommend to people wherever possible that they find a specialist and try to learn from them. Like I tend to recommend Michelle Ronson at curiositytank.com. Not sponsored. I get nothing from that. Where she has some courses on UX research. So here's a specialist UX researcher teaching you UX research. It's not a boot camp. It's not a Udemy course. This is just someone who knows what they're doing, teaching you what they know. I would look for stuff like that. I meant incorporating it into your schedule. Oh, that's impossible to answer. I don't know what your schedule is. As far as I can tell, people with children have no time and people without children have time. I have no idea how to tell you how to incorporate anything into your schedule. You might need more exercise. You might need more healthy vegetables. You might need more UX education. I have no idea what you need, and I couldn't begin to tell you how to shift your schedule to accommodate for it. I'm certainly not going to tell you to sleep less. So that's a hard one for me to answer. I'm going to have to just stick with my original answer, even though it was the wrong answer. So how do you make time for something? I think the best answer was given by my grandfather, my late grandfather, who said, you make time for what's important to you. Now, that being said, I know people who right now in the pandemic and with quarantines who have suddenly become their children's teachers and 24-hour carers who never expected that would happen, who thought their kids would be gone during the day. They do not have time for anything, even if it is important, because everything is focused on their children, which is completely understandable. So in normal times, whatever those are, I would say you make time for what's important. But I would say if you are struggling to juggle your life right now in the pandemic, and especially with childcare and homeschooling, then that does not apply to you. And on a quick note, this was my license plate in 2011. Remember when this meant something? Remember when this meant you were a UX specialist and not that you also did visual design in 2011? I remember that. And then I remember it changed. It changed when I wasn't looking. And all of a sudden it meant, oh, yeah, I'm a jack of all trades unicorn product designer. And then it's like, oh, new license plate. But yep, that was my license plate in 2011. I had many people drive by me on the highway and go, yeah. That was outside of San Francisco when I lived in the San Francisco area. Now I'm not in the San Francisco area. I'm in Italy. And they don't do personalized license plates here. So, wah, wah. Anyway, we're running late. Thanks to everybody for joining in. I appreciate everybody's time and questions. Steele, great to get to know you. Hopefully, I will find out your real name. Send me a LinkedIn message and say hi. But I promise to call you Steele if you prefer. And it sounds like a video gaming name. Scott, good to see you, and everybody else. Thank you, Steele. And hope to see you guys at tomorrow's podcast, or at least next week's office hours. Be well and have a good end of May.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.